Yeah, you should have. It's the Wilk Report. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio, with a review of Doctor Who Series 12, Episode 8, The Haunting of Villa Diodati. And I hope I pronounced that right, because I do not speak Italian very well. Alright, so this is the episode where we get to the lone Cyberman, hinted at in Episode 5, from Jack Harkness, played by John Barrowman, where he tries to warn the companions to tell the Doctor, beware the lone Cyberman, do not give it what it wants under any circumstances, at all costs. Do not give it what it wants. So what does the Doctor do? She gives it exactly what it wants. I foresee terrible things happening the next 2 episodes. Yeah. Oh my god. Okay, so... Sorry, I'm still dealing with the cold and recording all this with the cough medicine I'm taking, not helping nearly as much as it should. But yeah, that's what happens with respiratory illnesses. They just linger with me, and I'm sure you know how it is. But yeah, so we've got this story taking place in 1816, the year without a summer, at the villa of none other than Lord Byron himself, on the night that Mary Shelley conceives of the story for Frankenstein. And it features a Cyberman, or a partially converted Cyberman, not quite finished, but finished enough that he is trying to find something he calls the Guardian, and it turns out it's actually Percy Shelley himself. He somehow came across this blob of silver mercury-looking stuff that infected him, and it turns out it's actually the entire computer mainframe database of the Cyberman Empire, the Cyberium, trapped within Percy Shelley. And it turns into a haunted house, monster in the house type story. And it's actually pretty interesting because it does recycle, again, some elements from the Moffat era. In particular, Nightmare in Silver episode from way back in Series 7. And what they call the Siberiad or whatever. But yeah, the Cyberman Empire has been defeated. It's gone, it's destroyed, but there's still one left. And to paraphrase from the Legacy of Kain series, Soul Reaver,
as long as a single one of us stands, we are legion.
And that is true for the Cybermen. When you've got one, you've got 1,000, you've got 10,000. You've got a freaking army. But this Cyberman is looking for something specific, because if he can get a hold of this Cyberium that houses all the collected knowledge of the Cybermen, he can reconstitute the Empire. And again, the Doctor gives him exactly what he wants, against the instructions, the very clear instructions of Captain Jack Harkness. Why would you do that? So yeah, and that's pretty much the episode. So if you haven't seen it by now, shame on you. But yeah, so it's also a haunted house type deal. The house is basically converted through perception filters into this kind of maze where rooms prevent people from leaving, apparently. But of course, later on in the episode, they go ahead and realize, oh yeah, we are in a perception filter. I do like how they handled elements from history and kind of work it into the story. A lot of times when Doctor Who has an episode that deals with the past and figures from the past, famous people, usually it involves the famous person in question becoming involved in the story and kind of deviating from history. Here we have trying to work history into the story without changing it too much. So you can kind of see this thing happening, but there are a few cheats. For example, Claire Claremont, who is the stepsister of Mary Shelley, did actually fall in love with Lord Byron and actually had a kid with him. In fact, at the time they got together in June of 1816, she was already pregnant with his child and later had to give that child up to him because she couldn't raise him, and she couldn't raise her daughter on her own, because Byron was basically a bag of dicks. And eventually, he said, okay, fine, I'll raise a kid under one condition: you're not to have anything to do with her again. Dick! And this is a problem I've had with Doctor Who Series 12, because as we saw with Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror and Thomas Edison, you're kind of whitewashing some of the worst aspects of Thomas Edison's crimes, and here we're taking Lord Byron's misdeeds, especially the way he went through lovers like they were candy and discarded them, and again, kind of like glossing over that. So Claire Claremont doesn't actually break up with him until after she has his kid. So here it's kind of a cheat where, by the end end of the episode, she's like, yeah, spell's already worn off. I'm already over you. Kind of late for that. I mean, there were some elements to like about this. The actors playing their respective roles all did incredibly well. I actually like this one. I would give it a 7 out of 10, a solid 7, not 6.5, but a 7, maybe a 7.5. That's about as high as I'm going to go because, again, we're getting a bunch of stuff from Chibnall where he's kind of recycling stuff we've seen before. I mean, like the whole shifting maze of a house, we already saw that in The Doctor's Wife, where you've got the asteroid named House, the entity inhabiting the asteroid invades the TARDIS and takes it over with Amy and Rory inside, and then turns it into a sort of maze where he torments them. So we're seeing that bit recycled here. So again, Chibnall is having his team of writers, because I don't know why, but they don't seem to have any new or even halfway original ideas of their own, so they're just recycling stuff that's been done already, and arguably better, although with Moffat, not really. But here they're trying to do something a little different with it, but not quite succeeding. The concept of the lone Cyberman. Chibnall does not have a good record with writing Cybermen who are part human, because the very first episode of Torchwood, all the way back in 2005, or was it 2006? I don't remember, but you've got that episode where it's called Cyberwoman, and it was actually written by Chris Chibnall, and you have a partially converted Cyberman, from Iago's girlfriend at the time, and she is, trying to fight it, but ultimately gives in. This one, the Cyberman, really is kind of, again, he's absent his emotional inhibitors, so he's completely emotional here, behaving very against type as a Cyberman, but in a way that is supposed to make him more frightening, but, we get too much of his actual face showing, and he doesn't really come off all that scary, especially when Mary Shelley detects an ounce of humanity in him because he spared her son William, who's like an infant at the time. And it's actually true that at this time in 1816, Mary Shelley had already had an illegitimate child with Percy Shelley. She wasn't married to him. He was still married to his first wife, but, they were kind of separated, and Mary Shelley had already had a couple kids, one of whom was premature and died a few weeks after birth, and, then William, unfortunately, only lived a couple years before he died, and, so I think Mary Shelley ultimately had like 4 kids by Percy Shelley, and only the last surviving one lived into adulthood, and the rest all died in childhood, so it's very tragic. But, she tries to reach the Cyberman through his humanity because he spared her son. He didn't kill him when he had the chance, and instead actually kind of appeared to comfort the child as he was crying. So, then the Cyberman reveals that, he previously had children himself, but then he slit their throats because they were weak, just like William, and then that kind of destroys that moment. So, I don't know why you thought that was a good idea. Honestly, Chibnall, you suck at this. I'm sorry, but even Moffat at his worst could do better than this. This is coming from the writer of Broadchurch, a show that I actually liked a great deal because of the characters' arcs and the deeply personal stories. But here you're trying to apply that to Doctor Who, and it just is not working because you clearly are not a science fiction writer, and it's showing. Don't get me wrong, I get it. You're trying to humanize the lone Cyberman in a way that, makes him even more evil when he, rejects his humanity, but honestly, why even show that to begin with? So, I mean, it's like he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. It's like you either want the flat-out villain or you want the conflicted villain. I mean, don't get me wrong, conflicted villain trope is actually pretty decent if it's handled correctly. Honestly, you didn't need to do that here. This episode basically sets up for the 2-part finale where, you have the lone Cyberman playing into the Ruth Doctor, or Dr. Ruth. Dr. Ruth, not Dr. Ruth. Ruth Doctor, played by Joe Martin. I'm sure we're going to see her again in episode 10 because we've only got 2 episodes left in this series, plus the New Year's special because it can't be arsed to do Christmas specials anymore. But yeah, what did you think of this episode? Like I said, I give it a 7 out of 10, but no more than that. Because, I have spent a lot of time trashing it, but there were some elements about it to like, and I particularly liked the actresses who played Mary Shelley and Claire Claremont, but they didn't really have time to breathe. So I would say, yeah, this is an episode that kind of blew it in ways that it shouldn't have. Again, you've got almost an hour long for this format. You really should spend it where it counts, and it insists upon itself. But, some good elements. The Lone Cyberman is, for some reason, animating parts of a skeleton that Lord Byron had in a trunk in a room of his house because he thought it would be cool to wow people with. The hands go missing and start acting on their own and start offing people. So really interesting here. And it turns out the way that Percy Shelley is introduced into the series is actually a novel twist, but, again, it's kind of wasted because by the time they get to the action, then they have to rush through it because they didn't think it through clearly enough. And so I did have to take off points for all of that. Still, for what it was okay. Again, it's not great, it's not bad, it's just typical Chibnall Doctor Who episode by now, because we had 2 series of this where Series 11 back in 2018 didn't promise anything big and didn't deliver anything big. Now we've got promises of big stuff, but so far not really hitting the mark. Mainly because the writers aren't science fiction writers. They're ham-handed. They don't know how to handle the material they're working with, and they just keep talking down to their audiences. Stop doing that. They're actually trying to do something this series, but it's only recycling stuff that's been done before and arguably better, and still, it's just not living up to this stuff. And plus, you're setting up so much in this series so far that it just is not given room to breathe. And basically, you've got nothing but filler episodes, and you really should be devoting episodes to paying off. If not in the episode itself, then certainly in the next one after. There's just no excuse for this kind of writing. But you know what? We'll see what happens with episodes 9 and 10. Let me know what you think in the comments. I want to hear from you. If you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon and select all to receive notifications whenever we upload new content. Like this video, share it. If you want to help support the channel, keep the lights on, and help us bring you more content, head over to our Patreon or Subscribe Star page. We can't do this without you. Until next time, this is Michael Wilk for the Wilk Report saying take care, good night, I'm out.